You are listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com for all your racing merchandise needs. I'm your co-host, Aaron McAtee. Our other co-host you may have seen walking out of Barber Lounge 459 with a big old smile on his face. He is Scott Bally.
Hello, Aaron.
How's it going?
It's going real good. How about yourself?
It's going good. So, thanks to everyone who came out last week to the our show in McGilvery's Pub and Eatery in Speedway, Indiana. We had the Bettenhausen boys, Todd and Carrie Bettenhausen, which was a great show. So, thanks everyone for coming out. Thanks to McGilvery's and Top Gun Racing and Grand King Racers. And yeah, our show today, before we get anything else, is Didier Theys. Didier, it's a great guy. He won 24 Hours of Daytona a couple times. Great sports car driver, drove in, I think, 3 Indy 500s. And since then, he does, some driving coaching stuff and has worked for some different series. And now I think he works for Michelin. But he's definitely done a lot of stuff. And yeah, great guy to talk to for sure.
Yeah, no, it was. It was a good talk. It's like, man, so many of these guests, I know of them, or like some of myself, I know of them. I don't know them,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get to talk to them, and then you get to really get a good insight into the why and how they got where they went, in the sport and their personalities, that sort of thing. And yeah, it was a great talk.
Absolutely. So shout out to some of our sponsors real quick. Racer Collect. Thanks, Patrick Patton. Please go to racercollect.com for all your racing memorabilia needs. Fast Times Indoor Karting. I think this week I'm going to release the Fast Times Pro vs. Joe's video with Sebastian Severde. So I'm going to probably release that this week, and I think everyone will enjoy it. And yeah, go to Fast Times Indoor Karting if you're in the Indy area and you kind of want to know what it feels like to drive a racing car. It's a lot of fun. They're really fast, and it's where the pros go. And yeah, and I think we talked about this in the last time, but you've come to the last two, so we'll be releasing those sometime in
Yep.
the future as well. And
As
your
a spectator, as
yeah,
a
as a
spectator.
spectator, absolutely, as a spectator. I think everyone's probably figured that, but you never know. And then, well, not last, but race 92. I will mention, if you notice, I have Alan Jr. shirt on. We just launched Alan Jr. Merchandise collection, officially licensed by Alan Jr. So I think I got 5 designs up now. So definitely go on there, check it out. And if you're a fan of racing, you know who Alan Jr. is. Even if you're not a fan of racing, you probably know who Alan Jr. is. If you're not a fan of racing, listen to the podcast. Big props to you for sure. So I'm guessing if you're listening to the podcast, you're probably a fan of racing. But obviously, Alan Jr. In his prime, probably, one of the greatest IndyCar
Yep.
drivers of all time. No question about it. And it's Bobby. I think Bobby Unser said it best. I heard a quote once from Bobby Unser saying, "Alan Jr. in his prime, there probably wasn't anyone on the world that could probably beat him when he was in his prime."
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Of course, Bobby knows great talent, but
Yeah.
um, man, I was a giant Al Jr. fan when I was younger, just because I really liked his dad, and then Al came along and I don't know, he was so good right from the start, and it just I don't know, I was just always a fan. He was somebody that I like to see win, if that makes sense. And yeah, it's been great, been able to talk to him a few times.
Yeah.
Now you're working with them, with the t-shirts and stuff like that. And I just think that's really great. And I think it's important to remember. And it's even strange for me to even say remember Alonso Jr. But I think it's important that people remember how great a race car driver this guy really was. I agree and wholeheartedly. I think he at one time he could have drove anything and won in anything.
A lot of people, if you haven't read his book, definitely, I have it somewhere behind me, but definitely read his book. Great book, and learned a lot of stuff kind of about his life, and I didn't realize he tested a Formula One car, but I think he tested for the Williams Formula One team. So that
Yeah.
just shows the amount of talent that people knew he had, and the opportunities that he was kind of given. But
And that's when Williams was Williams.
yeah, oh yeah,
That's when Williams was was a powerhouse.
absolutely. So like I said, right now we're just the 4 different T-shirts, and I have a sweatshirt. I was rocking the sweatshirt at the McGilvery
Yeah,
show.
it's really great. Yeah, I'm not gonna give it away. Go to the website and look at it. I don't usually comment too much on stuff like that, and I thought that shirt was really great. So
Yeah, so it's each design's kind of influenced by different aspect of his career. So working on some other ones as well, but this is obviously like the '92 helmet, and then we have one for don't know what Indy means. Got to have that, and then couple inspired by oh yeah Long Beach. He won. I didn't realize how many times he won Long Beach,
yeah,
6 times, King of the
right.
Beach. So there's one for that, and then I have couple designs that are influenced by the Turbo Racing video game. He actually had three video games, I believe. Turbo, I think, was the coolest as far as the design goes. So I think people like that. And yeah, Al, like I spoke with Al last week about it. I actually met with him and his wife Norma, which they've been great with bouncing some ideas off, and I dropped off some shirts for them and they were happy with it. So we're gonna do some other designs as well. And yeah, check out race92.com and be sure to get your Allen Jr. merch, which is crazy to
Yeah,
say. I didn't think we'd ever have it, but it happened. So
yeah, that's awesome for you guys. You and Jacob, and dude,
yeah,
that's just so awesome. Man, speaking of Long Beach, that's coming up. I mean, Long Beach's next race on the IndyCar
next race.
schedule. It's such a it's become such an iconic event, and of course, a lot of people don't realize today it used to be a Formula One race at one time, and then it went to the Indy cars. But um, it's just such a it really. I mean, behind Indianapolis Motor Speedway, behind the 500, it's probably
Oh yeah,
the race that everybody looks forward to going to.
we've
Um,
been me and my dad have been to Long Beach one time, and it was pretty cool. Long Beach definitely has it figured out from promotional aspect and just the fan experience.
yeah,
I will say the food, there's no other racetrack I've ever been to that has as many good food options as Long Beach. And it helps. It's like in the middle of a city, right? But
right,
still though, I mean, they have like California pizza set up there with tents. I mean, that can be put in any racetrack. California Pizza King Taco, which is a sponsor of the race, which is great. So those are I think I eat King Taco just about every day. I love King Taco. But there's like, I mean, there's like also, I mean, there's like I don't know, like Red Lobsters, and I don't know, like Olive Gardens, like just in the middle of the racetrack, because I mean it's in the middle of a city. So you can
right.
go places like that too. Maybe not Olive Garden. And there's like one of those barbecue places, but yeah, I mean
It's
there's a
just
lot of
such a. I have never been to the racer. Oddly enough, um, and looking back, I have no I have no idea why I never went to one. It's
yeah.
so weird, but um, yeah, and I just know I don't know. You just like talking to people and that they really love it. They really look forward to it. Teams look forward to it. Uh, I know that some people were really disappointed that Indy Next wasn't part of the race
Yeah.
this year. There was talk that they might be the support for Long Beach, but then it ultimately didn't happen. So I know that some people are really desperate. Hopefully that comes back to the schedule. I think it'd be nice for those drivers to get that type of exposure as well. But yeah, that's great. But we got to talk about Texas. Texas was today, and Texas was a show. I mean, they IndyCar did wasn't a lot of fans there, but boy, IndyCar sure did
Yeah.
themselves. Um, they did a great show for the fans, and it was hard racing. 28 cars, clean race for the most part. Yellows breed yellows toward the end of the race. Had a couple of yellows. Um, but man, Joseph Newgarden wins again. Joseph Newgarden's quickly becoming the master of that place. Um, he has 3 in the last 4 years, I think, or something like that. So it's man, yeah, just a great show.
Yeah. No, great show. And yeah, it's really a shame that, they don't really get the amount of people there. But I mean, Texas was always, I mean, great race. I think the past couple of years it hasn't been as good as racing, but I mean, today, I mean, it was just, I mean, those last 20 laps, whatever, it was close racing for sure. And it just, I think Texas has always been a obviously a high risk track when you talk about just
Sure.
the risks factor. And I mean, when you see those guys, the moves they were making, I mean, there's a lot of risks involved in that for good racing, and people don't really think about that probably, but I mean, I just feel just from doing the go-kart stuff going 40 mile an hour, like I feel risks just doing something like I couldn't even imagine going 200 mile, over 200 mile an hour, 230 side by side like that. And I mean, it's incredible. I mean, what those guys do first off, and it's just to make good racing, right? So, like I said, great race for sure. And first off, obviously Newgarden was fast, but Pato was up
Yeah.
front. I thought
Well,
Pato was going to be the one to beat.
until the last 20 to 40 laps, you could say that it was a race of domination, right? Because at one time, Pato had everybody a lap down except for Joseph
Yeah.
Newgarden, who was like 12 seconds back or something, or maybe more like 17. Um, and then through the course of things, guys got back on the lead lap, and they just come and shoot out the end. So I mean, it was like Newgarden dominated the first part after some lead swaps early with Dixon and Rosenquist, and then he settled in. Led a bunch of laps, and Pato then later on settled in, led a bunch of laps. But man, that ending was excellent.
Yeah, and I mean David Malukas, that's one. I mean,
Yep.
David ran good last year. He ran really good. I mean, he could have won. I think it was Gateway. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Gateway, and he
Ran second at
just
Gateway last year.
how he was running today. I mean, it's just. I mean, he's fast. He's going to definitely be a force to be reckoned with. I wouldn't be surprised. I remember hearing rumors last year of him. It was a rumor like him going to it was like Penske or something crazy. But I mean, he's definitely a good driver, and I wouldn't be surprised if a big team were to pick him up at some point. I mean, Dale Coyne is definitely not a bad team to be with.
No, Delcoin's a good team. Ricardo, who coaches this team, is a really great team too
Yeah,
for these young drivers. Yeah, now Dale Coyne. I mean, of course, that's a whole. Now, hopefully, we get to talk to him someday. And, that's a whole different deal. Dale was his quote unquote starting part kind of guy early in his career, just so they could keep going. And then once he got out of the seat, they just kind of built that up over the last. I guess we're looking at 30 years now, right? And it's just it's so impressive what they've done and how many great race car drivers they've had. And um, but anyway, going back to Texas today, man, of course you had your major players. Penske wins, McLaren's up front, Ganassi's up front, Scott Dixon just does what Scott Dixon does. Alex Palou, whatever the differences they've had are obviously in the past now. Alex Palou, it looks like he's ascending back up to being the number one driver at Ganassi, because frankly, he as much as I love Scott Dixon, it's not the Scott Dixon's great at Speedway, he's great at all these places. Scott Dixon just knows how to manage races and win and be up front of the championships. But I think we could say Scott Dixon's faster days are behind him.
yeah,
And I don't say that with any kind of disrespect. I think I think you can make that argument.
yeah. Oh yeah,
Um, and but Alex Palou, man, he looked good today. He looked great today. And
he really did. Yeah,
and Chip Ganassi, if anybody gets a chance to watch the Dale Jr. download with Chip Ganassi, I watched that and I gained a whole new level of respect for Chip. And he talks about the Palou situation. He's just very cut and dry. He's like, I had a contract. Either he's going to drive for me or somebody's going to pay me. There's no there's no animosity. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing that, but like he's been a driver, he knows what it's like. But if anybody has a chance to watch that, I highly suggest it because it was excellent. It makes you see. It made me see Chip Ganassi in a whole different light. But again, getting back to the race, man, we got to talk about RLL racing. I really like Graham Rahal. I like the I like the fact he's got that team. I think he's got some great drivers there, but they are struggling,
Yeah,
and it is sad to see because really in my mind that team is an Andretti or
they've won Texas. I mean, they won Texas
yeah,
not that long
right.
ago.
And I think that if you listen to Graham's interviews, he's saying the same thing. Like this is unacceptable. Like we're a better team than this, and they're running in the back. I mean, he gets caught up in Devlin DeFrancesco's situation. You know, he brushes the fence. The car is kind of out of control. He can't steer it. It's not really necessarily his fault. But Ray Hall's in the back there, and he's just he can't really miss him. He gets over him, crashes. So now it's insult to it's kind of an insult way to end the day. Not only were you none of your cars fast, but now you got one absolutely destroyed, and that's what's going to happen when you run the back like that. And I sure hope they can turn it around. I know a couple of people that work for them, great people. So I sure hope they can turn around because I mean, this sport needs them to be up front as well, and they should be up front. Um, but anyway, that's kind of what I saw from the race. Hopefully, they go back to Texas. I feel like everybody says that every year, which does not bode well for them getting back to Texas. But you look though, Dallas had the Final Four, I think women's. I think the Final Four men's was in Houston. Coda ran not that long ago. So I mean, it's a hard ticket to sell. I think on top of everything else, because if you're a race fan, well, you've already may have went and saw the Cup cars at Coda, or if you also like basketball, you may have gotten Final Four tickets.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
who knows? But I'd sure like to see those crowds get bigger. I know that.
Oh, absolutely. So other racing, NASCAR at Richmond, Kyle Larson won. I did not watch that race,
Did not either.
but
The only thing I know about is I saw a photo of Larson and Jeff Gordon standing in victory lane.
there you go.
That's
That's all
all
you
I
need
know
to
about
know.
it.
That's all you need to know.
Right.
Outside of that, Formula One, Austin. Oh my gosh, Formula One at in Australia, Australian Grand
Right.
Prix. We're talking about Texas, but but yeah, Formula One Australian Grand Prix. I did watch the majority of it. Max Verstappen was doing
Yeah.
Max Verstappen things.
That was a
One,
crazy race.
it
Yeah.
was. So they I don't know if this is a new rule. I haven't watched Formula One as much as I have this year, but this thing where they're restarting, like they're doing like the standing start with a couple laps to
Well,
go.
so if you had a red flag, which they
Yeah,
had two red flags, on a red flag you go back to your standing start.
right. That's
And
it.
I think it was Hamilton that said that second one they had no business doing a red flag on that. They could have.
Yeah, it was kind of a mess, and they ended up kind of reinstating the positions basically.
Yeah, so it looked like to me in a weird roundabout way that after the crash after that, then they threw the checkered on the race, and then they reverted back to the last scored lap is what it looked to me like. And if you were still running, you got your spot back.
Yeah,
Um, because Alonso ends up running third, right? Second or third.
third.
Yeah. So which is great. I mean, you talk about
Yeah,
you talk, I mean that's insane how well they've run this year.
yeah, and I mean he's
Um,
finished third. I think in every race. I think he's been every
yeah,
race
I
at
think
this
so
point.
too.
He's third. I know he's third in the championship
I mean that's just if you
Yeah,
had told me Fernando Alonso was going to run top three
in an
the first
Aston
three
Martin.
races, yeah, and this year. I just said I'd thrown $100 at you and said there ain't no way.
Yeah.
Um, but man, he's doing it. That just shows you how great that guy is.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, there was that race there had a lot of spins, a lot of contact. The place looks narrow. I've never really paid attention to it before, but that place looks pretty narrow. Um, but anyways, that looked like a pretty good race too, though.
Yeah, no, it was a pretty good race. And then yeah, I mean, I think that's it, right? So
Pretty much. That's about as much as I know, at least.
obviously we're getting closer and closer to May, like we said, and it'll be here before you know it. I know Indy next. Tests out of the speedway this week.
Yep, they have a road course test on Wednesday. Don't know if the weather looks pretty rough on Wednesday. I don't know if it's tornado-esque, but it's looks like high winds, you know, pretty hard rain. So I don't know if they'll reschedule for Thursday if they get there Wednesday and it's just becomes something they can't run in. I mean, you could run the wet, but you can't run when the weather's just, completely horrible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, like I said, I think everyone will enjoy the Didier Theys interview, and I
Yeah.
think the next one will probably release in McGilvery's show. And yeah, until then, make sure you.
Hey, we got to give a shout out to Stingray Rob, guest of the show. He was running good today.
Yeah, you staying out of trouble.
It just unfortunately it was, just
Yeah.
one of those deals. Broke the steering. Then the thing just took off with a mind of its own. Looked like a hard hit on the inside, but he sounded like he was okay. So that's always awesome to hear. But yeah, give a shout out to him, man. He was up there, as a rookie. I mean, that place is tough. That place is tough on rookies. So he had a pretty good day going for a rookie. And I'd say that next year when he goes back, he'll even have a better race.
Man, we were talking about this earlier, but when he hit the wall and then he went down the track, I took a huge gasp. I was like, "Oh boy, this could could be big." But fortunately, he came through pretty much unscathed. He had a little kind of a hard, looked like a pretty hard impact there, but the safety
was
of
hard.
the cars. TV, obviously, you can't really tell and watch it on TV, but it looked pretty hard on TV. But fortunately, the car's pretty safe now, and the 90s, I probably would have some foot injuries from that.
Early 90s for sure. Yeah.
So, fortunate for the safety, and happy that Stingray was able to walk away pretty much unscathed from that deal. He may be a little sore in the morning, I'm sure, but yeah, great guy. And yeah, I think it's, and as he was saying in St. Pete, he got to pretty much experience in St. Pete everything there is to experience in Indy.
Right.
So
right. Yeah.
He's got some great experience.
Good and bad.
Good and bad. And it's good to have some bad experiences, right? I mean, you learn.
Well, yeah, that's where you learn, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where unfortunately, that's the bad experiences are what helps you learn, so you can have the good experiences later on.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Please make sure you like and subscribe. And we did forget one sponsor. If you look at Scott here, you'll notice that he's pretty comfortable. It is getting warmer here in Indianapolis. And thanks to the good folks at Good Guys Heating and Cooling, Scott Bowie is nice, comfortable, and cool.
I am. Yeah, Ryan and the folks there are awesome. If you're in the Indy area, please look them up. You can find them on the internet. Good Guys Heating and Air. Yeah, I mean, they've saved me a few times. They do flawless work. With the air conditioning season getting ready to come about, it'd be good to have somebody come out and inspect your air conditioner, make sure everything's in good working order. And, you can definitely reach out to them. I think they're running a pretty good deal on that right now. So, but yeah, please contact them and they will treat you right.
Absolutely. Well, hope everyone has a great week. And like I said, please like and subscribe. And thanks for watching and listening.
Take care, everybody.
Our guest today drove in 3 Indy 500s and was overall winner of 2 24 Hours at Daytona. We are joined by Didier Theys. Didier, thank you so much for joining us. It's really an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's always a pleasure to talk about racing.
Absolutely. So I know you're still obviously extremely active with racing, even though you're obviously not racing, but you're still involved with racing. But talk a little bit about how you first got interested in racing.
Well, I mean, my background, I mean, I was born in Belgium and, was already in those days, the best way to end up racing in open wheel is to starting racing go-karts. And I raced go-kart in European Championship. I started quite late, actually. I started racing go-kart when I was 16. And I did the European Championship and I won the Belgian Championship. And after that, I want to do it open wheel. I never had any, Formula One in mind. I just went step by step. And actually, I made a loan at the bank and I went to England to race Formula 4. And that's how I started in 1978.
Right on. So at what point did you kind of realize like it's something you wanted to do for a living?
Well, I mean, I started to race Formula 4 and like I said, I made a loan at the bank and I didn't have any money. And I started to make some results, just enough, prize money in those days to pay the bank back and say, well, I mean, why not? And I kept going. And after winning Formula 4 Championship, Belgian, Holland, European Championship races, I was lucky to be integrated to the Marlboro team. I was sponsored by Marlboro in Formula 3, many podiums in Formula 3, then Formula 2. Then, when in 1985, the Formula 2 became Formula 3000 in those days. And they were using the old Formula 1 coursework and then became pretty expensive. That's why I ended up in America. And, Tico Martini, who was a manufacturer in Formula 3 in Europe, asked me to drive a Super V for them in the US. And Super V was pretty strong. I mean, you look Super V, in the early 80s. And you had Michael Andretti, Alan Sir Jr. who won this championship. And I said, well, if I don't make Formula 1 in Europe, maybe I can make it in IndyCar. And I came here to race Super V. I won the championship in 86. And I automatically, when I won the championship in Super V, I was hired by True Sport to race Indy Light. And I won the championship also in Indy Light. And then after that, I find a ride in IndyCar. And I raced IndyCar between 87 and 93. And then after that, I moved to sports car. Giampiero Moetti, who was Italian owner of Momo Steering Wheel, asked me to race Daytona with them in 95, which is what I did. And then I started to race that Ferrari 333 for many races and winning Daytona with that car and Sebring the same years, and also Watkins Glen and 2 other races. Sports car racing was a new step for me, and I raced sports car till 2008 when I retired.
Was it just a case? I mean, I'm assuming your dream was Formula One. Being where you're from, the circuit you were running. Was it disappointing to have to come to America, or was it just part of the adventure?
No, I turned the page. I know when after I raced Formula 2, I was in contact with some different, teams, and the price tag to make you weigh in those days was $1 million. Belgium, it's a small country, advertising budget to put $1 million together in those days was pretty hard. And no, actually, I went step by step. I didn't really any goal of IndyCar. It didn't work in Formula 3, Formula 2 or Formula 1 in Europe. Let's try something else. And I came here and I discovered America. And after one season, I really enjoyed it. And I've been here for 37 years now. My kids are born here. And, I felt welcome. No way I will move away. I'm here now. No, I was not disappointed. It was just a different way to succeed in racing.
You just won the race and you didn't care. You didn't care where, when, how. As long as you can make money. The most important is to win race. The most important is to win race. It doesn't matter what you win. And actually,
I always tell, young drivers now, I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. If you win race, it's just like a train, the train moving. You can jump out of one wagon and you can jump out of the other wagon, but the key is to keep moving with the train. And if you win races, maybe you're going to win races a smaller Formula for maybe 1 year too much. But if you win race, the door will open one day, in any case. I don't believe too much in luck in racing. It's always a reason for something. There's always a reason when you win. There's always a reason when you lose. And if you can keep that train moving all the time, you will always find an opportunity.
So how familiar were you really with IndyCar? How much did you follow IndyCar when you came over here? I mean, was it something you were, you followed over?
Completely zero. I mean, only seeing, the exposure in Europe of the Indy 500, because, I mean, in those days, in the 80s, the only race, from Europe, from the, racing newspaper,
Indy 500,
it was the Indy 500, but it's funny because when I came here to race Super V, I noticed in the paddock, while Super V most of the race was in support race of IndyCar. I mean, in the paddock, I recognized some mechanics from the Formula 3 days, from my early days in Europe, which is, well, I mean, you see guys you already met in the past. It was kind of easy to be accepted, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. So, when was your first actual time on an oval? So it would have been like Phoenix, maybe, or did you do any?
Yeah, no, it was even well. If it was Phoenix, it was easy. I think the first time was in Saner in Quebec.
Oh,
okay.
That's when Rick Mears had a big accident. 85. That was my first oval.
Wow. I'll get your attention, right?
Actually, I mean, that car, that Martini, I mean, it was just like a Formula 3 car, exactly like the Rolls in those days. And that Martini was quite competitive in Europe, in the European Formula 3 Championship. And the only difference actually was the tires a little bit narrower and the engine was going to be more horsepower than the Formula 3. I had a hard time at the beginning, not the racing over, but just to set up the car because I didn't have much experience. And luckily, I find a good mechanics who had some oval experience. And actually, I won my first oval race after maybe 3 or 4 races in ovals. I won the night. It was a famous race in those days. I don't know if it still is, but the Super V race the night before the 500 was IRP in Indianapolis on Saturday night. And I had the luck to win that race, and that was it,
Yeah, this year they run US 2000 with them.
Okay.
Midgets and Silver Crown cars and US 2000.
Yeah, it's funny at the end, I was in the podium in that race, just a little story, and I could hear somebody who yelled my name from the grandstand. And I looked and I didn't recognize that person, and actually it was Harry Leondek's dad. And I know Harry Leondek's dad because he had the Formula 4 team in Europe, and he came to see Harry racing in IndyCar. And, of course, I met him quite a few times in Europe, a big racer, and it was funny to hear my name from the grandstand, in Indianapolis,
Right. So, I mean, how big of a learning curve was it for you to go from obviously pretty much a complete, road racing background to racing ovals?
I understand in overall, I mean, and more in IndyCar than actually Indy Light or Super V. I would say racing on ovals is 60% of the car and 40% of the driver. On the road courses, the other way around. In the road courses, 60% of the driver and 40% of the car. And, and I was lucky actually because I have a good technical feeling background to set up the car. And it didn't take too much for me to understand what, the car need. Like some few area on the car I was not familiar at the beginning, like the stagger, like the tilt, and put more camber in one side and the other side, but when you learn that after a few practice, I mean, you feel what the car needs, yeah. People, I mean, sometimes Super V drivers didn't understand, I can drive the car very neutral because, to be safe, you need to have a lot of understeer. And but I could manage to have the car quite neutral, and of course, a neutral car is faster.
Sure. You mentioned you had mechanics that really helped you when you first transitioned to ovals and that. And were most of your rides in Europe and in America, at least early on, rides that you kind of picked for yourself, or were these just opportunities that the doors just opened up for you?
Well, in racing, don't forget, the door is never open. You need to push the door yourself. And,
Right. Yes.
yeah. Well, in those days, I didn't have any agent. I always been, by myself. And the only time I had some help is when I was a Marlboro driver in the 80s, where the cigarette money was quite not easy, but it was also a good push. To find a good ride. And but I didn't have that when I came to the US. The only opportunity I have is, the manufacturers called Martini asked me to drive his car in the US because he wanted to sell cars here. And I did my job because I won race, I won the championship. And and after that, I was lucky enough to a good racer and became a good friend. Is Steve Vaughan from True Sport. If you remember, in the 80s, True Sport ran the Budweiser car for Bobby Real, and I became teammate of Bobby in Indy Light. And actually, I did one IndyCar race with Bobby in the end of the season. Actually, the team thanked me for my title in Indy Light. It was not the Indy Light name in those days; it was American Racing Series, but it's the same. It's just the name change. But opportunities. You win race, you dare, you show up, and you're nice to people. And that's what I said. I don't believe in luck. There's always a reason for something. And I was lucky enough to push the door was a little bit open.
Absolutely. So, talking about ovals, obviously, Indy 500, everyone, all the drivers we have talk about, racing Indy. And we've interviewed a lot of drivers that kind of have a similar background to you, where they did basically all road course racing. And then they just kind of jump into IndyCar, start doing ovals. Indy 500, obviously, a lot of people say it's a lot more intimidating than the most your normal oval, right? So kind of what was your first impression of Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
Well, I have to admit, physically and mentally, Indy is probably the most difficult because in my days, it was like 5 weeks because I did my rookie orientation the first year. And I spent 5 weeks at Indy, and it's very difficult to keep your motivation, for 5 weeks in a row. Every time you go in the car, and then you get a day off because it's raining, then you go back in the car. It's tough. I felt, Indy not that difficult to drive. I would say Phoenix International Raceway, 1 mile oval, is definitely much more demanding than Indy. Because you're driving in 19 seconds. I remember my first race at Phoenix when I finished the race, and when I went out of the car, I couldn't really walk straight because the blood on your body goes in one side. It's like you drank for 5 minutes. Indy, it's all about setup of the car. It's all about the team, putting the right setup. I mean, in those days, I think it's still the same now. We end up dealing with half a degree of front wing, half a degree. It's the team is need to be very, very precise to make a good car. Yes, but I to be honest, I never really felt Indy. You cannot really overdrive the car. In the road course, if the car is not that right, like Long Beach Grand Prix, or you get a bit of a push or you get the car loose, you still can manage to change your style to cover that. In high speed, like Indianapolis, you cannot do that. You can manage to control the car and maybe save the car, and if the car goes a little bit sideways in one corner, but you're going to save it once, you're not going to save it twice. You end up in the wall.
Right.
Absolutely. The big thing that, we've interviewed a couple drivers that say that the big thing to really go into ovals for them was, and it was around the same time era that, you kind of got into, was they're holding their head up like on ovals, because some of them didn't have like the helmet straps. Like, did you guys have helmet straps when you raced?
Yes, it was a strap plus the pillow on the headrest. Yeah. And also you tied. We had the little straps here, and you tie it more or less. It depends where you had filling in the car. Yes, yeah. But we had already the big headrest, and actually you put some foam on the side. But actually, that was, in my days, the only the main, thing to hold your helmet was the strap, because the headrest on the side with the vibration, you cannot really have the helmet touching that too much, because even if it's soft, you still have vibration and you don't see that well, Yeah.
Well, did you ever have a problem with buffeting as well?
Yeah, we tried many different helmets, and actually, Bell in my days, Bell make a good helmet, and actually I kept using that helmet in an open, prototype after that, to try to get some buffeting, with a little gurney on the top. You just get we call that the duck, shape here on the front of the helmet. We had few devices to keep the helmet stable, and actually I use the same helmet when I start to race sports car, like Daytona, for example, with the Ferrari 333 or some of the open cockpit car. That helmet was a good help, when in the traffic speed. But when you by yourself, it's not really a big problem. But when you have cars on the front of you, you get so many moving air, and then your helmet goes like that. It makes the helmet pretty stable when you follow somebody. Yeah.
What was your best start at Indy?
At Indy?
Yeah.
Qualification is always interesting. You get a lot of pressure. I mean, I never been very lucky at Indy. My only time I ran in the top 10 was with Granatelli, and it was a mistake of a pit stop at the end, and I ended up, I think, in 11 or something like that. My first year with Arciero, I finished quite far, and the last time in '93, I was driving for Ron Emelgarn. I had the crash in practice the day before qualify. If you go look on YouTube, you can see my crash in turn 4. I lost the car. We were trimming the car to get some good straightaway speed, and I lost the car. But I managed to qualify the following week, and the car was repaired. It was the same car, but I never been competitive. I never been competitive at Indy like I was in the road course.
Right. The reason why I asked is because everybody's got their story about the starts, and I didn't see where you started, the further back
middle of the pack. I mean, the start is kind of it's funny, but my first time there, when you practice the month of May, you by yourself, even on the qualify weekend, you get, in those days, it was 200,000 people showing up for qualify. And the grandstand are quite okay, it's not full, but you get a lot of people. Then you show up on race day, and you go behind the pace car on the first lap, and with that crowd of people in turn 1, I mean, it makes the track darker, and you think the color change, because
Right.
I mean, the last time you drive the car is on carburation day on Thursday, but there's not that many people there. But when you show up on race day, everything is full, and the track is different. I mean, I'm sorry for my French, but the track is different, and actually, it takes 1 or 2 laps to see. It's funny that darkness of the people of the grandstand reflect that to the track, and you think the track is different, and you think turn 1 is tighter. And also, when you start to get that speed with with the ethanol, the methanol, I mean, you cry in your helmet, because you get, when you start at the middle of the pack, you get that that all those exhausts, free up that methanol from the engine, and you smell that, and actually you cry, you get what you cry, you get your eyes are really moist, from that. And that was my also, say, oh, what's this? And then clean up after 2-3 laps, but the first 2 laps is pretty tough, yes.
So, you're talking a little bit about the 500 kind of being physically demanding, but if you look at the most physically demanding road course back then was probably like Detroit
Grand Prix.
So if you compare like Detroit to end of the Indy 500, kind of where does that compare with
road
physically
course?
demanding?
The Indy 500, you still can, kind of relax a little bit in straightaway. When the car is right, it's physically is not that difficult. No, I mean, a road course like Long Beach Grand Prix or Detroit, and actually also one pretty hard race, I remember, physically, because the heat was the IndyCar race at Cleveland, on that airport, the Brook Lakefront Airport, and that was always the 4th of July weekend. with like 95% humidity and alongside the lake. It was pretty hard to breathe, you know. And don't forget, I mean, those cars, those Indy cars in those days, 800 horsepower, the 8 gearbox, no power steering, no traction control, which is, those cars were pretty physical.
And that and that airport wasn't exactly the smoothest either.
No, exactly. No, it was okay. It was okay. We,
Right.
you know, maybe Meadowlands was a bit bumpier, and the smoothest race, road course, street race, I would say, actually was the Miami Park in Miami. You know, the park there was pretty smooth. You know, was a smooth racetrack. But yeah, but for sure Cleveland was kind of bumpy. Yeah, and
What,
also difficult to see because I mean, airport is pretty wide.
Mhm.
Going to a corner where the apex, you need to be at the apex, and then you can have 3 cars side by side because it's so wide. It was quite interesting, yes.
What was the track
Well, I
that had
like it. I like it.
there was a track the Champ Car raced in, and I don't know, you guys may have raced at it too with the train track on the track. Was that Cleveland? Or
No,
maybe they changed it
no, it was like
because the cars
Houston or
got airborne.
Baltimore
Oh,
or somewhere
okay.
like
I think
that.
you're right. Yeah, because cars used to get
Like
airborne. off that.
Baltimore or somewhere, I think.
Okay.
But I mean, to be honest, I had more, more success in
Mhm.
in sports car because I drove probably for better teams. I managed to have quite a few pole position at Daytona before the 24. Winning race like the Glen 6 hours, fighting wheel to wheel with some other cars. I mean, I had better equipment in sports car racing than I did in IndyCar.
Yeah, I mean, when you look over your list of accomplishments, it's pretty staggering. All the championships and everything that you've done. It's and a lot of early open wheel success, obviously. IndyCar being its own monster, but man, your sports car success is just unbelievable.
My only regret in IndyCar, and when I look on all my season, the only time I drove a car from the year is 1988 when I drove for Dick Simon. It was an 88 Lola. Well, every car I drove after that, it was 1 year old car. I drove for a good team in those days, but they didn't have the right equipment. It was for Vin Granatelli with Larry Curry, who was a crew chief. I drove a Penske with a Buick engine because Granatelli was putting everything he can to be successful at the 500. And the push rod Buick in those days was a good engine to have. Well, what we learned is it was a good engine to have in qualify because the horsepower. But in the race, when you end up in the traffic and you have to back up the throttle, and on, because you cannot be flat in those days all the time. Well, with the torque of the engine, it changed so much, the pitch of the car, and you lost so much downforce, and the car was very difficult to drive. In the race compared to qualify. And the other years, it was always, a year-old car, and then that's a little bit the frustration not to have at least one season in a decent car in IndyCar to hopefully make some more podium than I did. Yeah.
Right.
But no regret. I'm still sleeping at night. Another one. Drivers who race. Sports car racing. You want to have Daytona, Sebring, and Le Mans. Well, I get Daytona, Sebring. I get 3 podium at Le Mans, and I missed the win twice. But hey, that's life. That's racing.
What is that Le Mans experience like? And we've asked several drivers this, and they all have a little bit different answer. But what was your experience like there?
Well, I learned Le Mans in the 80s when there was no chicane in the straightaway of Mulsanne, right. And we were at 245 miles an hour every lap in the Portland 62. And it's like Indy when on a fast racetrack, you went away for a year. And then you come back, well, just like Indy, the first few laps, well, you hold the steering wheel pretty tight. Then you became more relaxed, you look at further and further. And then, after 5, 6 laps, it became like normal. And, I remember my 4th Le Mans, I was driving for a Swiss team called Walter Brun. And in all Le Mans to reduce the horsepower of the engine, we are allowed to have a certain amount of fuel for 24 hours, which is, we try to save fuel to get enough fuel if we have to push the last hour of racing to win the race. And in the middle of the night, I end up pitting with my teammate who drove the other car. His name is Oscar Larori. And we started talking to each other. We understood, well, let's help each other. We get a long straightaway here. We can save some fuel by playing draft. And actually, we played draft for a full stint of 55 minutes for 12 laps. Actually 13, I'll explain in a second why. One lap I was, had my nose was underneath his tail at 245 miles an hour. One lap is him, one lap, and we managed actually to do an extra lap by saving fuel. At that speed, the throttle went halfway, and we kept the same speed in the straightaway. Wow. And we managed to save fuel for one extra lap. Well, then you go back in the motorhome and you think about it. Yes, you make an extra lap, wonderful, and then you just think about it. Well, it's kind of crazy at 245 miles an hour. He was putting his turn signal when he was passing a GT. In those days, there was bigger gap in speed between the GT cars and the prototype, which is, we had to be careful when we passed, but we trust each other and we managed to do an extra lap. It's kind of stupid, but it worked.
And one thing I want to ask real quick about kind of combining the 500 and Le Mans kind of into this question. Obviously, you were familiar with the pageantry with Le Mans before you ever came over to do the Indy 500. And obviously, Indy 500 greatest or biggest, largest day single sporting event or whatever. Kind of how did that compare to you for you? Obviously, you were familiar with all the pageantry at Le Mans, a lot of people there. But Indy 500 obviously is a whole different atmosphere as well. So what was your kind of initial thought of that?
Well, the part where, and actually you realize that after, when you drive, you don't even think about it because you only think about turn one and how to enter turn one, how to make the strategy for the race. But, I went back after I stopped racing IndyCar, especially for the 100 years anniversary. One thing was really exceptional at the Indy 500 is the emotional feeling of the start. All the ceremony before you go in the race car, there's only one place in the world, and it's the Indy 500. You cannot really compare that to anything else. Even if Le Mans get a lot of show before the start, it's not at the level of Indy. Well, it's a Memorial Day weekend. You get the military, you get the people there, you get the jet, you get the, the national anthem, Indy is only Indy. You cannot compare that. And for me, is the number one, definitely, number one.
We had a couple of guys even talk about the parade. When you ride the cars with the cars downtown. We've had a few guys say that was their favorite part of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's impressive. You get 100,000 people there on the sidewalk, and you wave to everybody. Yeah, definitely, it's something. Yeah, but when you race, you still focus. You're still thinking about you're there. Your body's there, but your mind is already set up for the day after.
Right.
You part of you go with the flow, but you don't really think too much about that because you concentrate on the race already.
Right.
So when was your first 24 hours at Daytona? Was that after you started IndyCar?
No, it was actually no before. It was in no, it was after. Sorry, I'm sorry. I raced Sebring in '86, and actually I was racing Super V, and I went to see. I was in Florida testing somewhere, I don't remember, and I went to see the Sebring 12 hours just to see. And I knew already Giampiero Moretti, raced the Momo car. He was racing a March Buick, and actually it was a 2-car team, and one of the driver was sick. And he asked me if I can drive the race with Tom Glory. And I say yes, and I did a few laps in practice to get familiar with the track and the race car. But unfortunately, I didn't drive the car, in the race because the engine blew up before my turn. But I think Daytona was '94. My first Daytona was '94 with a Ferrari GT actually, and then '95 starting with the Momo car, the Ferrari 333.
How many co-drivers did you have? Because I know at one point there was only like 2 co-drivers in some circumstances.
Well, in the old days, if you look at Daytona in the 60s, 70s, I mean, even Le Mans, 2 drivers was enough, mainly because the car was less physical. I mean, no downforce, very light steering wheel. The grip level of the tires and the suspension were not that great. And actually, that's what made the big difference. That's why 2 drivers in the 1670s was plenty enough. But then you start to have big wing, big heavy downforce, like, you know, those GTP cars or Group C, and they start to be physical, and that's where Le Mans moved to 3 drivers. Yeah, the most physical endurance race is probably Daytona and Sebring. Daytona because you get 12 hours of nighttime, and you know, and you're in the traffic all the time. I mean, you get, you know, like 60 cars starting the race. I mean, you between GTs all the time, and it's part of Daytona also. It's not only the speed, but also get the feeling of the GT you catch up to make sure that guy, you know, sees you, where you can pass inside, outside. It's all, you know, it's all part of the race, and it's part of the racing. It's not only the fastest guy who wins the race at Daytona, but he's probably the smarter guy. You know, to feel in the traffic, you can feel that car ahead of you if he sees you or not. You know.
Now,
Right.
were you someone that was able to sleep during those endurance races?
Yeah, definitely yes. I mean, like Le Mans, when you have three drivers, and you know, at night, you know, we try to do a triple stint. A triple stint is 3 times 50 minutes. Okay, and if 2 drivers can do 2 triple stints, well, that's 4 hours. You can be, you know, after you had your meal and you go in the motorhome, you have a massage, you know. I mean, you can sleep 4 hours, and 4 hours is a good night. And then you come back fresh, you know, middle of the night or early morning, and you're ready to push. And that gives you good motivation because, you know, when you go back in the car at 5 o'clock, you know, you get sunrise at 5:30 because Le Mans is mid-June, and the night goes between 10:30 and 5:30 in the morning. And they put new tires in the car, and that you're ready to make a good lap, and that gives you good motivation to go fast.
Right. So then, you know, kind of when you get out of racing, obviously you're still involved in racing. Talk a little bit about some of the, you know, things that you did after you were kind of done racing. I know you worked for Ferrari.
My last race was I was racing the Le Mans series in Europe, driving a Porsche RS Spider LMP2. And, you know, the last race of the season of that championship was the 6 hours of Silverstone. And my team was Freddie Lienhardt and Jan Lammers, and we finished second of that race. That race was won by Jos Verstappen, the father of Max Verstappen. Right. You know, small world. And I know Porsche was already the 4th year of the program, and I know they will not make any development of that car. I know the Acura was making a new car, which was probably faster than the Porsche. And I was 52 years old, and I said to myself, well, I am in the podium. I don't really want to drive GT cars, you know, and just to get, you know, just to stay in it, you know, and I decided it was the right time to retire. And, you know, for 6 months, I was thinking what to do, you know, and all of a sudden Ferrari called me, Ferrari North America, and they asked me, oh, can you come back as a head coach like you did, you know, in the 90s when you were driving the Ferrari 333. When I was driving the Ferrari in those days, the president of Ferrari North America asked me if I could help and come to the Ferrari Challenge race. And that was the first few years of the Ferrari Challenge, and to help some drivers to get up to speed, to do some classroom and tell them what to do, you know. And they asked me in 2009 to do the same thing. Can you come back as a head coach? And we get more cars. We have a new car coming in, which is a 458 Challenge car, which is a car of 570 horsepower. And we can use your expertise and, you know, and tell our driver how to do it. And that's how I start. And that's why I'm working full time with the Ferrari Challenge. And also I am a brand ambassador for Michelin. You know, they call that the celebrity host. Actually, Michelin invite big distributor to the race, and I take care of them over the weekend. That's why we met at Daytona. I do the same thing for Le Mans. We go to Le Mans, especially this year. We go with 75 guests at Le Mans because it's the 100th anniversary, and I will be the host for them over there. And I like it. I mean, it keep me in the racing world, and I share my passion for racing and my expertise for racing with new drivers, and I like to do that.
What's the age range of the drivers you work with?
In the challenge, I would say, well, we get the younger, I would say 10 years ago, it was more like 45, 50. Well, now we start to have some young businessmen who make good money in their business. And we have guys of, 28, 30, 35 years old. And actually, because they're younger, it's more competitive also.
Right. Yeah.
And for our challenge, I mean, they definitely have they've got some very notable people in the series, and not necessarily for being well-known race car drivers, but just, I know Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank.
Oh yeah, we had Michael Fassbender. And actually in the 90s, I coached Carl Lewis. Some movie producer like Sidney Pollack, like Michael Mann. All Ferrari owner who want to drive their car a bit better than average. And Ferrari attract people, and it's still a name. And I went back actually to the factory last November. We always have the challenge final in Europe, when I was in Imola last time. And, it's magic, it's magic. I mean, everybody loves that name, and they're pretty good at it, and they make good products. And, it's, it's not only the car you drive with Ferrari, it's the lifestyle you go with it. And, people love that.
And, sorry.
No, I got to ask, do you get one for the year?
No, even the Formula One driver, they don't receive one. They have one to drive, but if they want a car for their own, for the future, they have to buy it. Probably they get a good price, but no. And that came from the old man from IMSA Ferrari. He never give away a car. Never.
Do you at least get a discount? Do you at least get a discount?
Maybe a discount, but every Formula One driver, probably has to pay the cars. Yeah, but it's funny to see Ferrari. I forgot to mention. I went to see the line and the production and so on. It's amazing that to have a factory that every car in the line are already sold before the car is finished. I mean, not many manufacturers can say that. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's funny. People buy those cars not understanding they really are like a race car in terms of how well you got to take care of them. And, they're high performance machines. And
I mean, and these days, I mean, the etiquette they had like from 25 years ago, not to be reliable, actually that's over. I mean, the technology they have, they give you a 7 years warranty on the car you buy.
Yeah,
which is it's
I would never say they're not reliable. I mean, but you just
in the old days, they were. Well, they were reliable, but you need to take care of them. No, today I see people who drive their car every day, and there's no problem. They do 60,000 miles, without issue, and but it's fun car to drive. I have to be honest.
So
I think it's the closest to a race car you can find, and the challenge car. I mean, beside the safety device like the roll cage, the seats, the steering wheel, the position, and so on. I mean, mechanically, the brakes, the gearbox, the engine are really the same as a street car. No difference. Yeah.
I mean, are they pretty close?
670 horsepower.
Right. And how close, like as far as horsepower speed, do they really compare with like a GT cars? And
well, Daytona, in the straightaway, they're faster than a GT car because there's no restrictor, there's no BOP.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
GT cars get like 650, 600, 580 horsepower. Well, the Ferrari Challenge get 100 more with less downforce, which is in the straightaway. A challenge car at Daytona is 192. Sure. It's fast for a car who doesn't have wider tires than this. Le Mans. I mean, every couple of years they have a European Challenge race at Le Mans. They reach 200. I mean, it's fast for a street car.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty fast.
Yeah.
So talking about driving coaching, how do you approach driving coaching different? Maybe coaching a 16, 17, 20-year-old versus someone like Michael Fassbender, Robert Herjavec, who maybe got into racing later in life. I mean, do you approach that any differently when you're coaching someone like that?
Not really. The most difficult part is to have well, I have, different coach, different level of approach of the younger generation. Of course, they want to use the laptop all the time and look at the laptop and look at the line and so on. I'm more like old school. Sometimes, yeah, laptop is a good thing, but sometimes they forgot there's a steering wheel, there's two pedals and a guy behind the steering wheel. Get back to basic. If the guys miss the apex for whatever reason, close the laptop and work on that. You can work on the laptop, way after. No, because, and the most, difficult part I see when I have new guys coming to the challenge is the vision. They don't raise the vision and they don't look far enough. And when you look at a guy who brake too late to miss the apex, it's not because the skill, it's because the guy didn't go look far enough. And if you look far enough, you get that depth perception much better than if you look, on the front of the hood of the car. And that's the most difficult part. And that's sometimes I have a hard time to explain that to the young coach generation who want to only work on the graph of the laptop,
Yeah, I come from a world of like midget sprint car, open wheel type racing like that. And newer drivers, like you said, they'll tend to start the longer the race goes, they look more and more at the nose. Yes. And they're not looking up, and you're not looking through the corner, and you're not setting up your passes, you're not setting up your corners before you get there. And that, there's some people I think that kind of never get away from that. And then some people, they eventually break that, and then some people never have that problem.
No, exactly. And even for us, as a pro driver, I mean, every time I went back to Indy or I went back to Le Mans, the first few laps, I say, you look, well, because we're a racer, we get used to that very quickly. But, because the speed, you have to look much further. And for us, it's maybe automatic. But for somebody from the street, when we see all those crashes you get on the freeway, I mean, 90% of the time is because the people didn't look far enough, because, they look at the front of the hood, and that's why they make a mistake. And that's the difficult part, to make those drivers understand, to raise the vision, to anticipate what's going on ahead of them,
Right.
Yeah.
Only other question I had was, what would be your biggest piece of advice for, any young kid or whatever that wants to, get into racing?
Never give up. Always try. Always try. I mean, it's started to be, difficult. And always been difficult at every level to find money, to find a sponsorship, to get your way in. But somebody who's got the real motivation will. I don't believe in the guy missing the boat because he didn't find any money. If you're good enough and you manage to show you can be good, to people, get you in, manage to have one test somewhere, starting with go-kart. I still believe, a guy who's got the motivation to succeed will succeed. And unfortunately, you see some drivers who maybe get an easy life, maybe too easy life, and they maybe not starving enough. Those will have a hard time to succeed. But if you starve enough and want to succeed, I believe you can make it.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. And that's how I look at the sport. I mean, the sport's not fair. I mean, but nothing is, right? And I think being a not being a bridge burner too, somebody that like you're a real deal guy, right? I mean, you do what you say what you do what you say, and then you treat people with the respect that you want. And I think if you can do those things and couple it with winning, I think that goes a long way.
I noticed also, when, I mean, I'm not, it's difficult to explain, but I mean, one of the reasons why we don't have Formula One driver in Formula One, it's because maybe our life are maybe too easy in our country. You win or you don't win, you still have a food in your plate in the evening. And or at lunchtime, I mean, some drivers from countries where, like maybe South American, maybe they want to go out of this social level they are, and maybe they starve more, maybe they have more motivation to reach the top level. And hopefully now with the new generation, with Netflix, we get more interest of Formula One in this country, and I can see now the movement of Formula One driver potentially, with Sargent, going to Williams.
Right.
Hopefully it will change. And now Formula One was put on the map, quite good actually the last 2-3 years. Hopefully it's only the beginning, and we'll see more, American driver in Formula One, hopefully.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's been interesting watching Andretti try to, get their foot in the door, get in there, and I thought he made some pretty good points. Michael and Mario, tough competitors. They don't take anything lying down, and they felt some of that resistance of them coming there. And he's like, look, you want to be in America, you want to do all this racing in America, you want all this visual representation in America, and you also want all the American sponsors. Well, we want part of this too, and we want American sponsors. We want the visual aspect of, we want that same thing. It can't be just one way.
Sure.
And I just felt like that was summed up pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. But hopefully, I always feel 22 cars in Formula One is not enough. I will say 24. Can be a good number. More than that, some racetrack will be a hard time to find enough garage or something like that. But I think 24 is a good number. And 22, when you have a car, disabled, an accident, you end up racing like 14 or 15 cars racing. That's pretty lean. I think 24 cars on the grid, could be a good number. Hopefully it will be like that pretty soon. I hope they understand. But, you have to understand also, everybody, it's a lot of politics, you get 20 guys sharing a cake, why the same cake need to be shared in 22 and 24? NASCAR is the same way,
Sure. Well, IndyCar's trying to get that way themselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I fully understand what you're saying there. I do have one last question. And I think you probably already answered it. You obviously had a way above average talent. You're been a winner in everything you've done. And I know you're humble and I know all that, but let's tell truth here. You are way up there in skill level. What was it, do you think about yourself, that do you think aided that? Obviously you got the talent, but what was it, what part of it was it that helped hone that talent, make that talent stand out? There's a million guys who can play basketball in this world. You know what I'm saying?
Honestly, I never felt that somebody that good, but I had teammates and I know guys who were faster, but sometimes, and I see that a lot, sometimes they don't know why they're faster. And but I had the motivation, and like I said, I made loan to race Formula 2 also, and I had to pay that loan. I had to pay the bank, and Super V had prize money, Indy Light had prize money, and I used that money to pay the bank. And maybe that give you the motivation, and the determination, like I said before, to win race and to succeed. And at that time, I was really more motivated than ever, because the only way for me to win races is to actually, with the prize money, I was putting the money back at the bank, but also using part of that money to go to the next race, because the Super V team I was racing for didn't need the full funding for the season, and we used some prize money to go to the next race, which is I was forced to win to continue.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think I agree with you. And to the point of, I think the best. This may not be fair, but I think most of the best race car drivers have been ones that have really had to be great race car drivers, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, sure, yeah, definitely, yeah, definitely, yeah. But it's I'm lucky. I'm fortunate. I mean, I won some race. I could won more races. I'm missing a Woodland Le Mans. I'm missing a good season in IndyCar. But I mean, I'm fortunate that for the last 15 years, I still make a living out of racing. And I still see some drivers. I have some people, maybe more gentleman drivers than a young driver, but it's an opportunity I had with Ferrari, and I enjoy what I do, and hopefully I can continue from you a few more races, from your years. Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I see many helmets there on your shelves. Nice.
Yeah, they're just mini helmets. It's kind of hard to tell, but yeah, I collect a lot of racing stuff. So.
All right, very good. Good. It's good to see the passion, and that's the most important part. Is the passion. If you have the passion, you'll love it.
I always say that my wall is blank for people to be
it's pretty white. Yeah.
Put their dreams on. They can put their dreams on.
Okay.
Seems like you've kept a lot of your trophies and stuff, it looks like, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, but that's only my American trophy. I mean, all the trophies from go-karting, Formula 3, Formula 2 in Europe, I threw that away when I moved to America because I couldn't I didn't have the money to put that in a container and send that to here. And that's only my US trophies. Well, it's more there, but it goes around, and
Oh, that's awesome.
That's cool. You keep any of your helmets and stuff too?
Yeah, I kept the helmet of each model. When I was racing Europe, I used a GPA. It was actually, in the 80s, there was a French helmet. It was quite good, with if you see Formula 1 driver like a Villeneuve and the French driver, they used, it was a clip underneath. It was no straps. It was just a clip. And then when I came to the US and I started to race Indy Lights, the bell guy said, well, you race in the US, you cannot really use that here. You need to use a bell. And I use the bell for 25 years of my career. I still use bell actually with Ferrari. And actually I kept one of each model of the bell I used. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I see you on the race. If you come to a challenge race, just make sure you call me or you see me there, and I show you're on. I mean, I'd be glad. Yes.
You'll be here in Indianapolis, right?
No, we don't go this year. No.
Okay.
No, actually, with the Ferrari Challenge, we try to change the championship from year to year. Like, for example, we went to Watkins Glen 2 years in a row. No, we're going back to Road America. We did, Laguna Seca. No, we're going back to Sonoma. We try to alternate. We're going to Homestead. We didn't go to Homestead for 2 years. I mean, we try to alternate to keep the excitement and, not to make a boring championship. We're going to the same place every year. But no, Indy is out for this year. Yes. Maybe back next year. Who knows? Yeah.
Did you guys run St. Pete last year?
No, we did St. Pete a long time ago. We did St. Pete, I think 2012 or 13 as a support race but that's also the problem with the Ferrari Challenge. When you are a support race of an IndyCar race or sports car race, the track time is really limited. And those drivers, they want to drive a lot, which is now we decide we only do a support race of the Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal. That's the only one we do. The other race we by ourselves. Yeah, by ourselves, like now we get Homestead in 2 weeks. We already start to run on Wednesday. They get free practice on Wednesday, Thursday, and then the official practice start on Friday. And we get 2 races per weekend in the challenge. We get one race on Saturday, one race on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. That's awesome.
Yeah, we get 55 entries. It's pretty strong.
That's strong.
Now I gotta ask
well.
Now I gotta ask, when was the last? Have you driven any of the Ferrari Challenge cars like in the past? I don't know, 5 years, or have you done like?
I drive every model since I started in 95. Yes.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah. We get the new one coming next year, which is the 296. Actually, which is the same car you see probably Daytona, the 296 GT cars. We're going to use that chassis for the next challenge car. Yes, yeah, but no, without the hybrid system, because just like the GT is too complicated, too expensive, for spec racing, which is it will be the V6 turbo. It's still going to be 600 horsepower, which is plenty enough for a challenge car.
Sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Where are you based?
Indianapolis.
Oh, Indianapolis. Oh, perfect. All right.
I
very
can
good.
I can see the pagoda from my front yard, so I'm
Oh, all
extremely
right.
close.
Wonderful. Perfect.
And he's not that
perfect.
far. He's not that far either. So.
I'm on the other side of the
Perfect.
Speedway, and then you're out in Scottsdale with all.
I am in
seems
Scottsdale.
like,
Yeah.
Seems like all the racers are out in Scottsdale now.
Oh, in one point, we were like 10 or 12 in the 90s here. Yeah. Now it's only 3. I mean, it's Logan Dake and Tom Sneva and myself. Yeah. But in one point, we're like,
Chris,
Larson lives out
are
there?
you
Larson lives out there now.
who's that?
Kyle Larson, he lives in Scottsdale.
Oh, I
now.
didn't know that. I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
did you ever race it? And he may have been before your time, Chris Neifel?
Yes, I know Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, he
no, it was
lives out
after.
there.
I started racing car after Chris. Yeah, Chris is still here. You're right. Yes.
Yeah.
But
We
in
just
one
had him
point,
on.
I mean, active drivers, 10, 15 years ago, it was Mark Blundell, JJ Leto, Adrian Fernandez, Lundek, myself, PJ Jones, Sneva. Yeah, it was a big group. Big group.
Yeah, PJ still lives out there, and then
Yes. Yeah, he's got a go-kart shop, I think. I didn't see him for a long time. Yeah.
yeah, his son goes to college in North Carolina, but yeah.
Buddy Rice, I think, is here too. I think.
Yeah.
Buddy Rice.
Yep.
Is,
Yep.
I forgot
about
him.
that.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a lot. There's actually a lot of drivers out there.
They may be like the sun, but I tell you, it's cold today. It's 45 degrees and it's overcast. It rained this morning. Oh, sure.
It may be warmer. It may actually be warmer here for once in February. Because it was in the 50s here today.
You see? Yeah, we had a long winter here. Yes, yeah. Winter for Arizona,
Right.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, thanks.
Thank you, guys, and hopefully, maybe we're, for sure, you get my phone number now.
Yep.
If you see the schedule back in 24 at Indian Fair Challenge, just stop by. I give you a tour.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. And
right.
I go to Daytona every year, so I'll see you probably at Daytona at least.
Yeah, we get. We're doing also. Going back in Daytona in December. Ferrari's get a driving school called Corso Pilota.
Mhm.
And then we have the school in Cotta. We have the school in Daytona also in December, and always spend a week there for new drivers, for the challenge. Yeah.
Was that remember when they had the Ferrari F1 cars at Daytona a couple years ago? Vettel, I think it was like Vettel and Raikkonen there.
Yes,
were you a part
Yeah,
of
that was
one?
part of the final. I mean, when the championship we get the Asian Championship, we get European Championship, North American Championship, and now we have an English Championship. Actually, the final is always in one place. And in Europe, they do either Mugello or Imola. We've been to Abu Dhabi. We've been to Valencia in Spain. And actually, I think it was 2015 or 16, the final was in Daytona. And during those finals, you get always the Formula One drivers show up and do demonstration with the Formula One, for the show. And just to give you an example, we had that at Imola last October. 40,000 people show up to see the Formula One doing donuts in the straightaway. Well, in Italy, when you put the Ferrari on the racetrack, everybody show up,
Sure.
I mean, yes, it was like amazing. The grandstand of Imola was as full as the Formula One race, 6 months earlier. Crazy. But it's in Italy, and it's not too far from Ferrari. That's one of the reasons. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. I hope you have a good night.
All right. No
Take care,
problem.
Didi.
See you soon, guys. Thank you very much.
See ya.
Bye-bye.